Are you anything like me? You like to go watch big explosions in the nighttime sky on the 4th of July? You like to stuff your face with hamburgers, hot dogs, and a nice cold can of Dr. Pepper? Or maybe you also like to study wartime adventures and wartime stories. And if you do, I've got a doozy for you today. We're going to discuss how it started and how it went. This is the Korean War. The Korean War. What actually happened? Well, like any great story in history, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. And just as that the Korean War has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And I want to get to the bottom of it and see how it ended. Was there a victory? Was there a loss? Or was it just a stalemate? Let's talk about that. As every story goes, there's a beginning. And before I get into the beginning, I want to take you back and show you what Korea was like leading up to the Korean War in 1950. First, I want to start by introducing you to someone that comes up later in the story, so that way you're not high and dry when I just start mentioning this name. But also, I apologize if I mispronounce anything in this video. I'm an American, and apparently we mess things up a lot. Okay, so the man I want to introduce you to is Syngman Rhee, also known by his art name, Unam. It's a really fun word to say, Unam. No idea what it means, but hey, it's a fun word to say. So, Syngman Rhee was a South Korean politician who served as the first president of South Korea from 1948 to 1960. Rhee was also the first and the last president of the provisional government of the Republic of Korea from 1919 to his impeachment in 1925. That was a whole mouthful. The Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea. Good night of living. Anyway, let's get on with some history about Korea. So Korea has not always been a free and independent country or nation. From approximately 108 BC to 1910 AD, over several hundred years, and several different dynasties, they were under Chinese rule. China lost control, however, after the First Sino-Japanese War, when Japan basically came in and whooped China. Not a big surprise, they got samurai. I think samurai are a little bit cooler than freaking ninjas or something. Like, what even is a ninja? Dude has no armor or cool weapons. He's just like, what? Whereas a samurai is like, ta! It's even cooler. Like, who doesn't want a freaking katana on their back? They just like, hi-ya! Like, bro, I know I want one. Honey, can I have a katana? I got no answer. That's okay. We're going to continue before I get a little too carried away. Japan basically mollywopped China and created this treaty called the Treaty of 1910, where they got China's signature, Korea's signature, and of course their own signature. And by doing so, against Korea's will, Japan basically just annexed the country and assumed control. Now fast forward to August 8th, 1945, when Soviet Russia has just invaded Manchuria. Sounds a lot like someone else we know back in the 1930s and 40s. Hitler. Am I right? Get it? Anyway, by August 10th, Russia had already entered into North Korea and secured most of the major cities by August 24th. They were in country for 14 days, and they basically said, haha, Japan, you beat China in like 5 years. I'm going to take you in 14 days. And they gave them the what for. They gave them the old 1, 2, 3 combo. They basically said, get out of here. And they assumed control of the northernmost part of Korea. Simultaneously, however, the United States gained and essentially maintained control over the southernmost part of Korea. And in between the division of the country in 1945 and the start of the Korean War in 1950, there were some things that, kind of started coming up, like, I don't know, Kim Il-sung was like, hey, Russia, what if we just invade South Korea and take communism over to them? That's such a great idea. Let's see how that turns out for them. All right, here we are at the beginning of the Korean War, and here are just a couple of things that you're going to need to know that I might mention. If you hear me mention anything about the KPA, that is basically the sanctioned military for North Korea, and likewise the ROK being the sanctioned military for South Korea. But also, just to put into frame of mind, the Korean War lasted from 1950 to 1953. June of 1950 to be exact, and July of 1953 is when things started to finally ramp down from wartime. So we start this story off with Operation Pokpong. At dawn on June 25th, 1950, the KPA crossed the border into South Korean territory, which, mind you, the border on the map for this specific time frame is called the 38th parallel. If you look at a map, there's cross sections, and when you count down from where the territory starts and ends, the 38th parallel line is where they crossed. Right there is a bridge called the Hangang Bridge, which runs across the Han River, and you'll hear about that in just a moment. KPA forces started to attack with heavy artillery fire and ground units going across the 38th parallel. And they justified their attack by saying and claiming that the ROK troops started it. That's it. It's a whole he said, she said sibling rivalry. I don't tell you how to start your own wars. I'm not going to do that. I don't expect you to tell me how we start ours either. It's a really bad parallel. Anyway, so this all started on June 25th, and by June 27th, Unam has evacuated Seoul with some of the other government officials, and at around 2 o'clock on the 28th of June, the ROK blew up the Hangang Bridge, which had about 4,000 refugees crossing it, and several hundred died in the attempts to stop the KPA from advancing into Seoul. Now, despite their efforts, they did end up making it into Seoul, and Seoul actually fell that day. Now, some of the South Korean National Assemblymen remained in Seoul as this was going on, and 48 of them pledged allegiance to the North. And also, kind of odd, but on the same day, reordered a massacre of suspected political opponents in his own country. And in just 5 days, the ROK, which had about 95,000 troops, went to less than 22,000 troops. It was just a straight up brutal beating. The U.S. involvement was actually seen very quickly. By June 27th, just 2 days into the 3-day attack on Seoul, we had air and naval forces on scene to try and repel the invasion into Seoul. And by July 1st of 1950, we had our first unit on ground in Korea. And by July 5th, we entered into the Battle of Osan. Now, just a little bit of history on our first significant entrance into the Korean War. There were about 540 soldiers in Task Force Smith, a small forward element of the 24th Infantry Division. They flew in from Japan, mind you. So on July 5th of 1950, Task Force Smith attacked the KPA at Osan, but without weapons, again, capable of dealing with tanks, heavy artillery, and other heavy weaponry. The KPA ended up defeating the United States with around 180 American casualties, and the KPA progressed southward, pushing the United States back into 3 different territories. I'm not going to try and pronounce them because they are pretty hard to say. I will put them on screen. So this forced the 24th Division's retreat into another part of the country, which the KPA captured in the Battle of Taijon. The 24th Division suffered 3,000 so deaths, wounded, and about 3,000 more captured, including Commander Major General William F. Dean. We're here. We're at the middle. And let me tell you, nothing happened. I'm not kidding. Really, nothing happened. Everything significant to the North Korean War really happened from 1950 at the start of the war in June to about July of 1951. Everything after that, yes, there were battles, there were different things, but everything presented itself to be a stalemate. No one drew forward, no one drew back in retreat. We kept the fight at the 38th parallel. Can you really say that the United States lost the Korean War, or that South Korea lost the Korean War, or even North Korea, that they lost the Korean War? Yes and no, because North Korea's whole objective was to capture the rest of the country and to unify it under a communistic system. But they didn't do that. You could also say that they succeeded because they didn't lose any land than they really already had. We kept everything behind on the bottom. They kept everything above. So it's really a win-win situation because South Korea kept communism out of their government as well as they kept their land. So, they really benefited. They didn't gain any more land, but I don't even think that they were really looking for that. I think they were just trying to protect themselves. And even then, the United States, we weren't looking to take over the entire country. We were just lending aid to a country that wanted to keep communism out of its government. And so really, there's nothing. In the end, North Korea failed to lose any of their previous land holdings, which actually, I would say you succeed in that. South Korea kept communism out of its government, and we pretty much funded a sibling rivalry and fought against China in there somewhere. So, stalemate? In all seriousness, I hope that you enjoyed this video. This is just the first installment of what I'm going to call the Fire Files. I hope that you enjoyed this video, that you may have learned something as I've learned something. I've been studying this all day, and I know I didn't go into great detail. If there's anything that you wanted to hear about from this video, let me know, and I might do a little subdivision under this video. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. I hope that you like, you share, you subscribe, and you click that bell notification button so that you can be notified when I release a video. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.